You ever meet someone and just know they're gonna leave a mark on your life, whether you want them to or not? That was Lucas. I met him on my third day at my new job, working front desk at a boutique hotel in Portland. I was still figuring out how to reset the POS system without breaking it when he walked in. Coffee in one hand, that metal water bottle everyone carries in the other, and the kind of quiet confidence that made the room feel smaller. He was hired as a night auditor, said he preferred quiet shifts and hated small talk, which was fine by me. Most people in hospitality fake being bubbly. Lucas didn't bother. He was tall, lean, but not awkward, more like someone who knew how to carry himself. Dark hair, always tied back in a small bun, and these soft, unreadable eyes that didn't miss a thing. We didn't talk much at first, just quick nods during shift changes. I'd clock out at 10:55 p.m., and he'd always show up 5 minutes early, like clockwork. But over the weeks, something shifted. It started small. He began bringing in extra coffee when I stayed late. At first, he said he accidentally got 2, but then it became a thing. He'd leave dumb little notes in the guest log just to make me laugh when I opened it the next morning. Guest in 214 thinks the ghost of his dead cat is haunting him. Offered him wine. He accepted. I'd read that at 6:30 a.m., exhausted, and find myself smiling alone at the front desk with his messy handwriting scrawled across the notes section. We built this quiet rhythm. I'd linger during shift changes. We'd talk, not about anything heavy, just takeout places, weird guests, the mysterious smell in the stairwell nobody could figure out. But there was something underneath it, a pull. Or maybe I was just imagining it. Because the truth is, I'd been wrong before. Guys like Lucas, they don't usually look twice at someone like me. I'm the safe guy, the steady one. Never the one they flirt with, never the one they stay up late thinking about. So I kept it friendly, guarded. But the tension, it started building. Quiet, steady, like water behind a dam. One night, around 11:30 p.m., I had to stay late because the front door lock jammed again. We were both crouched in the lobby, me holding the flashlight while Lucas fiddled with the screwdriver. "You know," he said, shoulder brushing against mine, "we could probably fake a maintenance request and get the locksmith to replace this whole door." "Fake a request?" I asked, trying not to focus on how close his breath was. He smirked. "I mean, it's technically broken." "Technically?" Lucas paused. He looked up at me, and for a second, something flickered in his face. Not the usual sarcasm, just this soft, quiet awareness. Like he saw right through me. Then, the lock clicked. "Got it," he said, pulling back, switching back to neutral. "You're good to go." I gathered my stuff, heart thudding in my chest. "Night, Lucas." He gave me a small nod. Night, but as I walked away, I could feel it. His eyes still on me. And I knew. I didn't imagine that. After that night with the lock, something changed. Lucas didn't say anything about it the next shift. He showed up on time, same coffee in hand, same quiet look, same lazy posture at the front desk. But when I handed him the log, our fingers brushed, and neither of us moved away right away. Just a second, maybe half a second. But it meant something. Or maybe I was losing my mind. The thing about working nights in a nearly empty hotel is how quiet it gets. The silence stretches. You hear your own thoughts echo. Every click of a door down the hall sounds like thunder. And when someone starts to occupy that silence with you, it's almost intimate. That next week, I stayed late almost every night. I told myself it was to finish paperwork or balance the petty cash, but really, I was just finding excuses to be there when Lucas arrived. And he stopped pretending not to notice. One night, I was hunched over the desk, staring at a spreadsheet I didn't understand, and Lucas walked in 10 minutes early. "No coffee tonight?" he asked. I looked up, forgot to grab it. Guess I'll survive. He reached into his bag and slid a cup across the counter. I didn't. That night, I didn't leave right away. We sat in the back office, sipping coffee, talking about nothing in particular. He told me about his brother in New Mexico, who'd just had a kid. I told him about my dad's obsession with restoring old radios. At some point, I noticed how close we were sitting, Our knees brushed. Neither of us moved. Then he said, "You always stay late now." It wasn't a question. I swallowed. "You always show up early." He looked at me, long and hard, like he was searching for something in my face. "I don't mind that you stay late," he said. My throat went dry. "I don't mind either," I replied. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, like something was standing right between us, waiting to be acknowledged. But neither of us did. Not yet. I finally stood, broke the tension. "I should go." Lucas nodded. "Yeah." But as I stepped toward the lobby, I felt him behind me. Not following, just watching. And something in that moment settled into my bones. This wasn't just about a lock or coffee anymore. Something was happening, and it wasn't going away. The next time I saw Lucas, he looked different. Not in some dramatic way. He still wore his usual dark button-down, sleeves rolled up like always. But his energy? It was quieter, more intense. I noticed it right away. He nodded at me when I lingered in the office past my shift. "You waiting for another broken door?" "Something like that," I said. I leaned against the desk, pretending to check the closing report, but really I was watching him. The way his eyes tracked the screen, how his fingers tapped rhythmically on the keyboard. Lucas was one of those guys who never rushed anything. He had that stillness people usually mistake for coldness, but I'd been around him enough to know it was more like control, and something about that was starting to mess with me. "So," he said, not looking up, "are you gonna pretend you don't feel this?" I blinked. "What?" He finally turned to face me. "You heard me." My stomach flipped. I tried to laugh, brush it off. "Feel what? Exactly?" Lucas leaned back in his chair. "Whatever this thing is between us, you gonna keep pretending it's not real?" My chest tightened. "You're straight," he shrugged. I thought I was. We stared at each other in the soft glow of the monitor light. My heartbeat was too loud in my ears. I wanted to say something clever, something to diffuse the weight of the moment, but I couldn't. My throat felt like sandpaper. Lucas stood, slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. He walked toward me, not fast, just steady. My back hit the edge of the desk. He stopped a foot away, close enough that I could see the tiny scar above his eyebrow, close enough to feel the heat between us. "But now I'm not so sure," he said, softer. "Lucas," he tilted his head, "if you want me to back off, say it now." I should have. I knew I should have. But I didn't say anything. Instead, I looked down at his hand, so close to mine on the edge of the desk, the knuckles barely brushing. Then I looked back up, and something in my chest cracked wide open. I whispered, "I don't want you to back off." Lucas didn't move at first. He just exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath for a long time. Then his fingers slid over mine. Not a grab, just a touch. Tentative. "You sure?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah." But just as quick as it started, he pulled his hand away. "Not here," he said, stepping back, voice low. "Not while we're on shift. I don't want this to be some behind-the-desk moment we pretend didn't happen." I just stared at him. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting away for the first time since he walked in. "You free tomorrow?" I found my voice. "Yeah." "Cool," he said. "Let's figure it out then." And with that, he went back to his screen like nothing had just happened. But everything had changed. I couldn't sleep that night. Not because anything wild had happened, but because of what didn't. That moment with Lucas, it didn't go away. It sat with me. The way he looked at me when he said, "If you want me to back off, say it now." He gave me an out. And I didn't take it. The next day felt like one long, slow countdown to the unknown. We hadn't made solid plans, hadn't set a time or a place, just that vague, "let's figure it out tomorrow." I had no idea if he'd actually reach out. I didn't want to be the one who chased it down first. But at 3:12 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Lucas, there's this ramen spot off Division, not crowded. 7? I stared at the message like it might explode. Me, yeah, I'll be there. And just like that, we had a plan. I spent way too long deciding what to wear. I wasn't even sure what this was. A date? A conversation? A test? I landed on simple. Jeans, clean black tee, denim jacket. Something low effort enough to pretend I wasn't spiraling. Lucas was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table by the window, sipping a beer, head tilted toward his phone. When he saw me, he stood, just slightly, like he wasn't sure if we were hugging or shaking hands or what. We didn't do either, just sat across from each other, awkward for the first time in a long time. "You came," he said, glancing up. "You texted," I replied, shrugging. He smiled a little, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. We ordered, talked about the hotel, the awful guest who demanded 40 towels and complained they were too fluffy, the manager who played motivational podcasts over the break room speaker like we were in a cult. It felt safe, familiar, but under it all, the silence stretched between words. That heavy kind of silence where something wants to be said but can't be. Halfway through the meal, Lucas leaned back in his chair. "So, I wasn't trying to mess with you yesterday." I paused, chopsticks still in hand. "I didn't think you were." "Good, because I'm not trying to play games here." I nodded, slowly. "Then what are you trying to do?" He looked out the window for a second, then back at me. "I don't know yet, I haven't felt this kind of thing with anyone before. Not like this, not with a guy." My pulse spiked. I didn't respond right away. Just let the weight of that hang in the air. "You're not freaking out?" he asked after a moment. "About you maybe liking a guy?" He nodded. I shook my head. "No, I'm freaking out about you, maybe not." Lucas laughed. Finally, a low sound that made something in my chest loosen. "You always do that," he said. "Do what?" "Make a joke right when things get heavy. Occupational hazard." He tapped his fingers on the table, thoughtful. "I don't want to be some experiment for you," I said suddenly, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. His eyes met mine, serious. "You're not. I just need to know. Are you curious, or are you into me?" Lucas didn't blink. "I'm here, aren't I?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I said. "You are." We didn't kiss that night. We didn't even touch. But when we walked out of that place and stood on the sidewalk, he looked at me like I wasn't just someone he worked with, like I was someone he chose to see. And that meant more than anything else. We didn't talk much the next couple days. Not because anything was wrong, but because everything felt suddenly fragile, like a snow globe you didn't want to shake too hard. At work, we slipped back into our usual rhythm. I'd clock out, he'd clock in, we'd trade a few quiet words. No big gestures, no lingering glances, but underneath, the air between us buzzed with unspoken tension. It was like we both knew something had shifted. We just didn't want to push it too far, too fast. Then came the storm. Literally, a huge power outage knocked out half the city. I got called in for an emergency double shift because the other front desk person couldn't make it. Lucas came in early to help reset the systems manually. We were the only two on site for hours. No guests coming in, no emails, no noise. Just the sound of the rain hammering the windows and our own quiet footsteps moving through the powerless building. We sat in the dark lobby with flashlights pointed toward the ceiling like tiny lanterns. "I don't think I've ever seen the place this dead," I said, sipping coffee from a backup thermos. Lucas nodded. "It's weirdly peaceful." Then he turned to me, flashlight glow catching the side of his face. "Can I ask you something?" I set my coffee down. "Yeah, what if we're both overthinking this?" "This?" He gestured between us. "This. Us. Whatever it is. What if we're making it more complicated than it has to be?" I hesitated. "Are you saying you want to forget it happened?" "No," he said quickly. "I'm saying maybe we don't need to have it figured out right now. Maybe we just go with it." I let the words settle. Because part of me did want to know where we stood. I wanted labels and definitions, I wanted clarity. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe the point was that he was sitting across from me in the dark, asking me not to run. So I nodded. Okay, we go with it. Lucas let out a breath, his shoulders relaxing slightly. Cool. But that wasn't the end of it. Around midnight, the power flickered back on. Lights buzzed, systems beeped, and suddenly we were back in the real world. I stood to check the front system. Lucas came up beside me, our shoulders nearly touching. As the screen booted up, I felt his hand brush against mine. Light, casual. But he didn't move it away. I glanced at him. He didn't look at me. Just kept staring at the monitor like nothing was happening. But his fingers slowly laced through mine under the desk. It was subtle, small, but it meant everything. I didn't let go. After that night, we didn't talk about the hand-holding. We didn't have to. It became one of those quiet understandings, the kind that settles into place without needing to be named. At work, we stayed professional. No flirting, no touches, but when we were alone, those rare off-shift moments that we used to ignore. We started finding excuses to be in the same place. Lucas started dropping by my apartment more. At first, it was under the pretense of watching a movie, or needing a new space to focus, as he put it. But then he stayed longer. He'd bring takeout, leave his jacket on the back of my chair, the kind of little things people do when they're letting themselves feel safe. One night, I woke up on the couch with his head on my shoulder. We'd both passed out halfway through a movie. I didn't remember drifting off, but there we were, pressed together under the same blanket, my arm curled loosely around his back. He stirred slightly, but didn't pull away. I didn't either. In the quiet of that moment, I let myself imagine what it would feel like if this was real. If this wasn't a slow burn in the dark, but something we could carry into the daylight. But there were still no labels, no conversations about what we were. And I started to wonder if he was waiting for me to bring it up. Or if he was scared I would, so I didn't. I just kept going with it, letting the warmth of his body next to mine answer all the questions we were too afraid to ask out loud. The next morning, I woke up to find the apartment filled with the smell of coffee. Lucas was in the kitchen, shirtless, wearing only joggers, flipping eggs in a pan like it was his own place. He glanced over his shoulder, gave me a sleepy grin. "You snore." "No, I don't," I said, rubbing my eyes. He laughed. "You totally do." I stepped closer, suddenly aware of how domestic it all felt. "You always cook breakfast for your..." I paused, almost choking on the word. Lucas turned toward me, spatula still in hand. "Roommate?" he offered, raising an eyebrow. I gave a nervous laugh. "I was gonna say, questionable couch companion." He smirked. "Well, I like feeding people I sleep on." The air between us shifted again, but not in a bad way. It was more like progress, a new step, even if it was a small one. We ate breakfast in silence, sitting cross-legged on the floor because I still didn't have a kitchen table. His knee brushed mine under the plates. We didn't pull apart. At one point, I looked over at him, mouth full of scrambled eggs, hair still messy from sleep, and I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. "Hope!" He caught me staring. "What?" he asked, lips curving into a lopsided smile. "Nothing," I said, shaking my head. But it wasn't nothing, not even close. It had been 3 weeks since Lucas first touched my hand in the dark, and we still hadn't labeled anything. He kept coming over. I kept leaving the door unlocked. He had a drawer now, half by accident, half by design. His charger was permanently tangled in mine, his sweatshirt draped over my desk chair. Our toothbrushes stood side by side in the cup in the bathroom. But we hadn't talked about it. Until the night he didn't show up, I waited. No text, no call, just silence. I told myself not to overthink it. People get busy, things happen. But around 11 p.m., something in my chest started to tighten. I didn't realize how much I'd come to rely on him being there, on the quiet predictability of him walking through my door, slipping off his shoes, falling into place beside me. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, screen blank, heart racing, in that low simmering, shameful kind of panic. Had I read it wrong? Had it all been a convenience to him, a safe space to explore something and then bail once it got real? I didn't know what to do, so I did nothing until 12:47 a.m. A soft knock at my door. I opened it fast enough to nearly rip it off the hinges. Lucas stood there, soaked. "It started pouring on my walk here," he said, out of breath, hair plastered to his forehead. "You could have texted." "I know," he said. "I should have. I needed to think." I stepped aside to let him in. He kicked off his shoes like always, peeled off his damp hoodie, and stood in my hallway like a ghost. "I was scared," he admitted, voice low. "That's why I didn't come. Scared of what this is, what it means." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "And what is this?" Lucas stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Like every inch between us mattered. "This is me falling for someone," he said, "and not knowing how to handle it because I've never done this with a guy before." I blinked. "And this is me," I said, "not wanting to be your secret phase." "You're not." He stepped closer. "This isn't a phase. I don't care what label it has. I just know that when I'm not here, everything feels wrong. I miss stupid things. Your bad coffee. The way you hum while brushing your teeth. That tiny crease you get between your eyebrows when you're focused." I stared at him. My voice came out quiet. "I thought you weren't coming back." "I almost didn't," he admitted. "But then I realized I'd rather show up scared than stay away and lose this." A beat of silence passed between us. Then I reached out, grabbed the front of his damp shirt, and pulled him in. And for the first time, we kissed. It wasn't perfect. It was wet and shaky and clumsy with emotion, but it was real. It was us. And when we broke apart, foreheads resting together, I whispered the words I hadn't let myself say until that moment. "I'm falling for you too." Lucas laughed under his breath, voice breaking just a little. "Took us long enough." The next morning, everything felt still. Not in the awkward, what did we just do kind of way, but in the right kind of way. Like my apartment had adjusted its shape around us. Like it had been waiting for that moment too. Lucas was still asleep on my couch, one leg dangling off the side, arms slung over his face to block the light creeping through the blinds. I stood in the kitchen, making the worst coffee known to man, trying not to smile like an idiot. He stirred, squinting toward me, his voice groggy. "That smell is either coffee or burnt tires." "Bit of both," I called back. He grunted, stretched, and shuffled over, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. It was easy, uncomplicated, warm. "I thought we'd wake up and it would feel weird," he mumbled into the back of my neck. "Yeah," I said, handing him a mug. He took it, sipped, winced. "Still could." "Give it time," I smirked. We didn't talk about labels. We didn't post about it. We didn't have some big announcement. But Lucas started staying over more than he didn't. He came with me to the bookstore on Sundays. He'd randomly reach for my hand when we were waiting for takeout, like it was just natural. And at work, we were still careful, still private. But when we passed in the lobby or handed off shift notes, there was a different kind of look in his eyes. One that said, "We know what this is now." A couple weeks later, we were walking home late, quiet streets, soft city sounds around us, when he suddenly stopped and looked at me. "You ever think about where we were a few months ago?" "Yeah," I said. "Feels like another lifetime." He nodded. "Sometimes I wish I figured it out sooner," I shrugged. "Doesn't matter, we're here now." He looked down, scuffed his shoe against the sidewalk. "Yeah," he said again. Then, softer. "And I don't want to be anywhere else." And that was it. Not some huge declaration, just a quiet truth in the middle of an ordinary night. Sometimes, that's how love shows up. Not loud, not dramatic, just consistent, present, real. Like a hand sliding into yours under the desk. Like coffee that tastes terrible but means someone woke up early just to make it. Like falling asleep next to someone and waking up to the sound of their breathing and realizing you don't want to wake up any other way. So no, we never gave it a name. But we knew exactly what it was.